Hello, everyone. Artisto Art Supplies here. Welcome to our drawing lesson. In this lesson, we're going to take this image of these two lemons and we're going to draw them using only values. Now, like I said, doing still life studies are very important to becoming a good artist because you need to study real life and understand how light and shadow, as well as shape, works. And the best way to do that is to draw pictures from real life. So let's go ahead and start lightly sketching in the shape of my two lemons. So remember to always keep things light until you know exactly where you want them, because otherwise it's going to be very difficult to come back. So I'm just very lightly sketching in the basic shape of these lemons. No details yet, just the basic shape. These are just contouring lines. And again, I'm looking back at my reference picture as much as possible. And try not to look at my drawings so much, but really studying the lemons and where that shape is going. So remember, you want to be spending at least 50% of your time looking at your actual object rather than looking at your drawing. Then go ahead and start sketching in there some of the details on those lemons. So I'm trying to stay away from adding too much light and shadow. I just want to add in some contouring lines as my guideline so I can come back in there and add in that highlight and shadow. So again, it's really important to go back and really study your object to make sure you're copying it correctly and also looking at things in proportions. See how they relate to each other and how far apart each thing is. Now, I know very often when you're drawing pictures like this, you're really going to want to start adding in some detail. But trust me, wait until you have the whole drawing laid out and have your shapes correct. Once everything is correct, then you're going to be allowed to go in there and add in all of your detail and shadows and highlights. You may be dissatisfied because it won't look realistic because your shapes are all off. Now, I'm going to go ahead and start adding in some value. So I'm going to be using cross-hatching to create my drawing. And so as you can see here, I'm just adding lines to create those values which are shadows. And I'm looking at my drawing as much as possible to figure out where those darkest values are. And also don't be too quick to add in those shadows. Make sure that you're looking back at your reference or your object. That way you know exactly what you need to draw in there. So, and if you're not sure, don't add until you're completely sure, or add it in very lightly. You can always come back and erase it. And you want to make everything exactly as you see it. So if you see a shadow line, pay attention to where it's hard or soft. Also pay attention if it's soft on one side, meaning that it slowly blends into the value next to it, or if it has a very hard line, meaning that there's a very distinctive line between one value and another value. You'll see I always come back to areas and add in more detail and more shading, just so I make sure that I get it correctly. And just like all of our drawings up to this point, we want to make sure that we work certain areas all at the same time. So rather than work in one area and then being done with it, we want to work it for a while and then move on to another area so that we can work the entire picture and never overwork an area. This will help us create a good overall drawing and help us so that we make sure that everything's in proportion and has the correct values. So now I'm adding some darker detail down here. And so you see, as the drawing goes on, I start to commit to a lot of the shadows, a lot more, by darkening them, but only once I'm completely sure they're where they need to be. It's also very important to pay attention to the way that you light your still lives. So in this particular photograph of the lemons, they're actually lit with one lamp. In some cases, you might want to have a lamp on both sides to try different types of lighting. And I recommend you try lighting things in different ways and then drawing them so you can understand. I'm just trying to copy exactly what I see, the exact shape and the exact values. I'm not trying to think how the lemon is made. I'm not trying to think how it works in perspective. I'm just trying to copy exactly what I see. That's it. Now I'm going to start adding in the background. The background is also very important in this drawing, and you want to make sure you get it in there because the background is going to add some contrast between the lemon itself and the background. So up here, where the lemon gets really white, unless we add a darker gray background, you're not going to really see a difference between the lemons and the background. But by adding in this darker gray background, all of a sudden the lemons stand out a lot more. And this is contrast. And again, I'm trying not to make up my own ideas of what the drawing looks like. I'm trying to actually look at the image and put down on paper exactly what I see in the image, or as close as possible. So in some areas, the background is a lot lighter, and in some areas, it's a lot darker. So I'm trying to show that in my drawing. Now I'm just going back over it and adding some finishing touches just to make sure it all looks good. I'm double checking my image over and over again, making sure that every area looks like the same in the image as it does in my drawing. Then I'm just going to quickly add a little frame around that, just to make it look neater. Then one last double check, and I think that looks pretty good. All right, so that brings us to the end of this lecture. So in this lecture, we took our black and white image of the lemons and we copied it for its exact values. We didn't try to necessarily understand it. We just tried to copy the values and the shape exactly as we saw it. This is called a true life study, and they're very important. So your first assignment for this lesson is to first draw this lemon image that I've just done. It can even be another lemon, but I want you to have a real lemon in front of you, or anything else. It can be an egg, banana, or anything you want. And then I want you to shine a lamp on it, and then I want you to try to draw that from real life. And I want you to try to copy the values and the shape of the object as best as possible. So I really think you guys are going to enjoy this assignment, and I look forward to seeing you in the next lesson.